Hello, Garland Nixon here. It's Tuesday morning. We're talking with Laith Marouf, and a lot of stuff going on in West Asia and the Middle East, and we're going to learn the details from Laith. Let's talk. Hello, Garland Nixon here in the seat of the empire, the absolute madness that is the U.S. empire. And sometimes I laugh, and people say, "Well, gee, you laugh in such madness," and I say, there's a couple sayings. Number one, you got to laugh to keep from crying, and number two, when it comes down to it all, at some point, you got to say, "Is this mad world? Is it a tragedy or a comedy?" And if you say it's a tragedy, then the only thing left to do is jump. And I ain't ready to jump quite yet. So we're going to start
in Arabic. In Arabic, we say the worst of afflictions is what makes you laugh the most. Also,
I like that. That's good. All right, let's start here and let's get to the important stuff before we even talk about what we got to talk about today. This is FreePalestine.tv. Look at this site. You want to talk about an awesome web? Let me get my ugly face off here so you can see this. Look at that, man. That's incredible. Look at the clarity of the video. That's really good stuff. Well, that's Laith Marouf's site, so make sure you go there. And of course, look at here. Donate to FreePalestine.tv. And if you notice, your donations can be one time or monthly. Now there you got military operations, you got field reports, latest episodes, all about them. But this little box right here that says donate to Free Palestine TV is critical because, Laith does, come on here, but he does goes on a lot of other channels. But the work at FPTV is available all over the world for people that don't speak Arabic. You can watch on the ground reporting, and keep in mind something. There are a lot of people who are doing there are some people at least who are doing some work journalist work, but Laith has lived in both Canada and and of course the Arab world, and so he has an understanding of the culture. He has an very clear understanding of the language, so he knows how to present it so that Westerners can really see and understand what's going on. So go to FPTV, that's freepalestine.video. Remember, .video. Go there. Make sure you follow them on all of their social media outlets, platforms, and of course, it's critical to donate. We got to keep this thing going. Thank you very much for your good work, Laith Marouf, and let's get going. As I said, you don't know where to start. Where the hell do you start in this absolutely friggin' mad place? Let's start here. Let's start here. Since France has such an old footprint in the Middle East, all over, so I'm watching, and now, the veneer of democracy throughout the empire and its vassals has been stripped away. Now that they're desperate, now that they're losing power, now that they're unable to dominate the planet. Don't get me wrong. I'm not in favor of Marine Le Pen or not in favor of Marine Le Pen. That's an imperial, crazy theft pirate country. But my point being is, they just decided, you know what? Here's somebody that could win, and Macron might win. We'll charge them with crimes and tell them they can't run. And you see it in Romania. Actually, they did it with Trump. The empire has stripped all veneer of attempting to be a democracy. In fact, I'll add one other thing. They don't even say anymore, we're going around the world to defend democracy. They don't say that anymore. They lost that. They're like, I guess that ain't going to fly anymore. Screw it. We're taking everything. Your thoughts, Lee?
Oh, yeah. Marine Le Pen is going to be jailed for 5 years for corruption. Of course, we know
corruption in France. Think about that. Corruption in France.
Yes, it's like wine in France, It's or underage sex in France. The idols of sexual liberation and women's liberation What's her name? The thinkers of the 1960s and 70s, they all demonstrated for the right to have sex with underage children, that in the 60s and 70s. So the contradictions are baked in Western civilization, quote unquote. And as we see right now, all of this idea of democracy and the right to vote and so on are being stripped away because the core bases of the imperial power are collapsing. So while it used to be beneficial to delude the world about democracy and so on, now it is not beneficial to the imperial objectives of the elite in the West. And as you noted, Romania was the first. Now we have France. There's big possibilities that Trump is going to face that again one more time, because now he is talking about a third term and maybe a fourth term. so it's done. It's done. All of this, democracy talk.
Good. I'd rather that they come straight out and say, forget it, this ain't a democracy. Good. You know what I mean? Why fake people out? Let's talk about what's going on in your region. Let's start with Syria. What's going on in Syria? Isn't it interesting how they told us we're in Syria to fight ISIS? And ISIS is now in charge of Syria, doing horrible, terrible, unthinkable things, which is what the U.S. does anyway, which is mass murderers. And now all of a sudden, you don't even see anything on the news in the West about Syria. What's going on in Syria that we need to know about?
Well, the situation is getting worse and worse. In the first days of the Eid, the end of the fasting in Ramadan, we saw slaughter of Shia and Alawites in the coast. Whole villages, videos coming out of complete, ethnic cleansing and genocide of these villages. And it seems like now they've already also moved to targeting Christians. There's a video today I watched of a Christian village in Homs area that got slaughtered and ethnically cleansed. I, as a Syrian, feel that the world looks at us less than anyone else on this planet. They view us as less human than anyone else. Because remember, when the war on Iraq commenced, people talked about the archaeological sites of Iraq. Well, today, now, nobody's talking about the archaeological sites of Syria, for instance. What is happening to them? Nobody even cares. People talked about the minorities in Iraq when the slaughter was happening under ISIS. Nobody is talking about the slaughter of the minorities in Syria right now. In fact, it boggles my mind that a lot of the people in the West call themselves Christian when the first Christian sites in the world are in Syria and nobody's caring about them. We don't know what happened to Ma'lula, for instance, where the first church on earth is. We know that the priests and the nuns of the Ma'lula and Sayyidnaya have been expelled. The whole population of the area that speaks Aramaic, language of Jesus Christ, have now disappeared. They have been ethnically cleansed. One more thing that boggles my mind is that the head of John the Baptist, the wise man, the prophet that baptized Jesus Christ, his head is in a shrine in the middle of the Umayyad mosque in Damascus. We haven't heard the Pope ask what happened to the head of John the Baptist. We haven't heard one Christian leader in the world ask what's happening to the head of John the Baptist in the middle of the mosque, Umayyad mosque in Damascus. We don't even have any pictures from inside the mosque since the occupation by the HTS. So that tells you they may have, unearthed his head and done something to it. This is how, as a Syrian, how heartbroken I am that nobody's asking these questions. And this is ongoing. We see also, by the way, the Israelis expanding their occupation. Over the last 3-4 days, they've been attacking Daraa province, which is right on the border with Jordan. And they have bombarded the cities and the villages there. In the areas that they've occupied since the fall of the Assad government, Israel has been expelling the Syrian citizens inhabiting those areas that they're occupying in the Qunaitra area, in the mountains of the Qalamun, and in now Daraa. And the number of Syrians that have been ethnically cleansed from their land, expelled from their land over the last 2.5 months, have now exceeded the number of Syrian refugees from the 1967 war and occupation of the Golan Heights. And again, nobody's saying anything. So my heart is broken, and Syria has fallen to the wolves. People are being genocided openly, outright, and nobody's asking about them. And all the historical sites of Syria are being looted, most probably being taken to Turkey and sold out on the black market. And there's no end in sight for the crimes that are being committed right now in Syria.
Might I add, again, that's why it's important for everybody to go to freepalestine.video, because these things that aren't going to be reported on in the West, you're going to get reporting and video. Freepalestine.video, very, very important, again, because they're not, this here. There's no media here. There's only government propaganda. That's all. I understand that there's bombing of Beirut, of some of the suburbs of Beirut, has happened again. Or commenced again. Go ahead.
Oh yeah, last night around 3:30 in the morning, I was, in bed, and I heard this huge explosion. It shook the windows, and of course, I got on the internet to see what's happening. And the Zionists decided to bomb the southern suburb, the Dahi of Beirut. They hit 2 buildings. The top floors on these buildings collapsed. There's at least 3 known martyred victims and at least 10 injured. Luckily, there wasn't more casualties. There's no, ranking Hezbollah members or anything that have been targeted in this attack. It's just civilians. And so this is the second time the Israelis attacked the Dahi southern suburb of Beirut in 3 or 4 days. And the first attack took down 2 buildings completely. Luckily, nobody was injured in that attack. That attack was the first attack in 4 months or 5 months since the ceasefire came into effect. So it seems like right now Israel does not want a ceasefire in Lebanon and is kind of poking at Hezbollah to hit back, to fight back. The president and prime minister of Lebanon, both of them issued condemnations, which are not going to do anything, really, these condemnations. There is talk about bringing a resolution at the Security Council, which most probably will be vetoed by the United States. So if this continues on this path, it seems we'll be back in a full war situation in Lebanon very shortly.
I did want to ask you about something we haven't talked about, and I don't know enough about, and there's something that's rarely ever reported on, and that is what in the world, what's going on in Iraq? What is this? We don't even know what the state of Iraq is. I do know that the U.S. still dominates Iraq, dominates Iraq's finances. I know that there are some PMU organizations there that are not necessarily connected to the government. Some are. What is the state of things in Iraq? What do we need to know about Iraq?
I think that's the question that everybody's asking. What is happening on the ground to the resistance? How is the United States dealing with the government in this build-up to attack Iran and Yemen, as we see? I think the PMUs, the Popular Mobilization Units, have taken now a backstage position while Yemen has taken the front stage of the Solidarity Front, attacking the Zionist colony and shipping to it. But I think they are also very worried in Iraq. They have HTS on their border. The Israeli military is expanding towards the border of Iraq. At any minute, Iraq could find itself with the Zionist colony military on its border, and that's going to be a big problem for Iraq. The other thing is that HTS at this moment also can attack Iraq. There was yesterday, by the way, clashes on the border between Iraq and Syria at the Bou Kamal crossing in Deir ez-Zor. Nobody has, claimed, involvement in these clashes. It's very awkward because not even HTS is speaking about these clashes that's happened, or the Americans. So it's being, left as unknown what is happening on the border of Iraq and Syria. Also, Iraq has a huge issue with the Kurdish Contras in the northeast of Syria, because if the Syrian state collapses and it's broken up into multiple states, as what the Israelis and the Americans want, then suddenly Iraq could find itself with a Kurdish state in the northeast of Syria, and those Kurdish militias crossing the border into Iraq and creating a unified colony or state. So I think Iraq right now has so much to worry about. It has the HTS, the Israelis, and the Kurdish, as well as, and above all of that, the American occupation and looting of the resources that's happening. So if any of these things are triggered, whether it's the Kurds or HTS or the Zionist colony attacking, or the US doing something inside Iraq, I don't know how stable the Iraqi government is. I don't think it will do better than the Syrian government with the withdrawal of support to it from Iran and Russia, Hezbollah. So I think this is why we see that the Iraqi resistance is quiet now. They don't want to bring too much attention on them for whatever they're doing right now, whether it's preparing for the inevitable attacks and or making sure that their back is safe right now.
One of the things that I read said the Israelis have said they will not tolerate an Egyptian military buildup in the Sinai, right? And I was a little worried because, I feel like Egypt is very much under the control of the US. Their government really is, in my opinion, maybe wrong, I don't know. But I don't see the Egyptians standing up or pushing back against Israel in any significant way. What's the story on the relationship between Israel and Egypt, and those stories or comments that have been made about Egypt potentially building up in the Sinai as though they're going to fight Israel, which again, I don't see them going after the puppet masters.
I'm glad you brought up Egypt because for the first time we saw huge demonstrations inside Egypt for Palestine on Sunday and Saturday. And these demonstrations started at the mosques right after the Eid prayers, where the imams, the preachers in the mosques, actually addressed the situation of Gaza and the Palestinians during Ramadan and during the Eid and what's happening to them in the slaughter. So that was a surprising thing. Number one, that what seems like to be the government ordering the preachers to address Palestine. It, for a year and a half, it's been the orders have, you can't address Palestine in the mosque from the government to these preachers. Now it was say whatever you want to. So clearly the Egyptian government wants to show both Israel and the United States that it has been keeping the Egyptian population at bay, and that if it loosens its hand just a little bit, chaos could break out and the Egyptian population will be ready to support the Palestinians openly. So I think, partially this was a warning to the Zionists and to the Americans that there's a limit to what the Egyptian government and military will accept, and that if the Egyptian military or government decide to openly support Palestine, that it will be very easy to mobilize the Egyptian population on their side. And I think they were successful in sending this message. And this is why we continue to hear these wars coming from Israel about Egypt. And I think it's probably since Trump made that stupid proposal of the ethnic cleansing and expulsion of Palestinians in Gaza to Egypt, most probably behind the scenes, the American government and the Israelis have been hearing the Egyptians telling them, we could flip the table on you if you continue on this path. And maybe they were not believed, okay, and their words were not taken seriously by the Israelis and the Americans. And this is why the Egyptian government let the population demonstrate over the last 2 days in mass to show that they are serious to the Americans and the Israelis.
Well, that's interesting. I had no thoughts that that would be, because there have been discussions about, for lack of a better term, I hate to use these terms, red lines, that Egypt, there are red lines with, because my feeling was like so many other these leaders that these countries, they're completely captured and, the U.S. can do whatever it wants. But I also think that there's maybe a feeling, at least amongst maybe some of the Gulf countries, some of the Arab countries, that they have to have a red line because at some point the people could rise up. A fear of an internal rebellion has to be brewing throughout various places in the Middle East.
Oh yes, and we just saw the Qatari, Saudi, and Emirati governments send public statements to Iran saying they will not allow the United States to use their territories to attack Iran. Okay, so this shows you that they know if there's an attack on Iran, that all their oil facilities, gas facilities, all their ports and airports will become target if their territory is used to attack Iran. And I think behind the scenes, most probably, the Jordanians, the Saudis, and the Qataris, maybe not the Emiratis, but the Qataris also have been complaining to the American government about its full 100% support for Netanyahu and how that is destabilizing these governments. And so, although these are vessels, there is definitely a limit of how much they can publicly be viewed as a vessel by their own populations. Me and you, we can call them vessels, but most of their populations probably do not believe that. But the more they are humiliated and the more the Americans only care for Israel's needs in comparison to the other vessels in the region, the more they are exposed to their populations as unable to protect them and or pursue the best results for their own populations.
One of the things that's discussed a lot in the discussion of U.S. military might, as it were, is Yemen. It's people talk about it in the context of Russia or China. They say you want to go against Russia and China, which were both great naval powers and great world powers, and you can't defeat Yemen. And they bomb Yemen and they do whatever. And the people in Yemen just smile and say, is that all you got? No matter what they throw, the people of Yemen say, well, is that all you got? We're just getting warmed up. Let's keep going. And they're very effective. The Yemen, hitting the airport, they seem very effective. They shot down another MQ-9 Reaper, or at least it's being reported. They're up to about over $500 million worth of these things that they're shooting down, which, might I add, apparently they fly very high. And what I've been told is They haven't really targeted and attacked American fighter jets, but it is an indication that if there is an expansive war, they have the capability should they decide to do that. What do we need to know about Yemen?
Yeah, I mean, they have said that they shot down an F-18.
Yes.
And so the Yemenis have been brilliant, their engineers, in taking old, Cold War era systems like air defense systems from the Soviet times, and upgrading them, and upgrading the warheads on them and the guiding systems on them to make them be able to take down these MQ-9 drones and the F-18, as well as the almost sinking the command and control aircraft of the USS Truman aircraft carrier. You know, there's a command and control aircraft that goes up in the air that coordinates all the activities of the fighter jets that take off from the aircraft carrier and the support group destroyers and so what have you. And this almost was shot down by Ansarullah, the Yemeni resistance, which forced right now the Americans, seeing that their command and control center for their aircraft carriers could be shut down by Yemen. This is why Trump sent in the B-2 bombers and the B-52 bombers to the Diego Garcia Island, and now the bombings that are happening of Yemen over the last 48 hours have not been conducted anymore by aircrafts taking off from the aircraft carriers, but from these strategic bombers at the Diego Garcia Island, because it's supposedly far enough that Yemeni hypersonic missiles and what have you can't reach Diego Garcia. We don't know if the Yemenis have weapons yet to reach that. They haven't tried. We'll see if that is. But the other thing that we should note from these using the B-2s and the B-52s is that these bombers are made to carry the largest bombs, meaning the mother of all bombs and or nuclear heads. And that means that, according to the Wall Street Journal, the American attacks on the bunkers of weapons in Yemen with the F-18s, F-16s, and 15s actually failed to destroy the weapon caches, and those bases were active, shooting missiles and drones within hours of the initial attack by the United States. So they're now trying with the bunker busters, the mother of all bombs, sorry, and we'll see what the result of this will be. And if the Americans can't destroy these bases under the mountains with the mother of all bombs, then we should be expecting strategic nukes to be used. And this is all happening on while the United States is threatening Iran. Well, if the United States can't destroy the caches of Yemen under these mountains, how can it do it to Iran? And I think this is why the strategic bombers were brought in.
Yeah, they're pretty much losing a war against Yemen. They're losing. They're not. If to me, a war is this: you announce strategic objectives. If you're unable to reach those strategic objectives, that's the definition of a loss. They didn't attack you; you attacked them. Meanwhile, my understanding is Yemen is still able to execute successful operations against occupied Palestine and still able to strike targets as the U.S. attacks them. Not only are they able to repel or withstand the attacks, but they're still able to conduct operations against occupied Palestine.
Oh, yes. And the head of American Central Command, the general in charge, is right now in Tel Aviv, and he's having to stay in the underground bunker in the Kiryat, which is like kind of the capital area, the Capitol Hill area of in Tel Aviv, with the commander-in-chief of the Israeli military. They're hiding in a nuclear bunker right now while they are preparing whatever attack. We don't know Are they going to attack Iran yet? Is it going to be whatever they're planning is attacks on Yemen and or Lebanon? But the point is the Americans don't trust going to Israel right now and meeting in regular locations. They have to go to these nuclear bunkers. Now, we look at where the American military is in the region here. They're in areas that are very close to Iranian borders, whether it's Qatar or Bahrain or Emirates or Saudi or Iraq. And it will be much easier to destroy these bases than it was for Iran to attack Israeli bases. The time between firing the weapon and it reaching the target is very, very small. And this is also why we saw over the last 48 hours tens of flights of military cargo planes carrying weapons from South Korea to Al Udeid airfield in Qatar and the bases in the east of Saudi Arabia. So it seems like the Americans are moving a lot of air defenses that they had stationed in South Korea now to the coast of the Gulf to protect themselves from whatever expected Iranian attack is going to come. But how much will this defend actually the bases? We saw the THAAD failing and the David Sling failing and the Patriot and all of them failing in the face of Yemeni hypersonic missiles and Iranian drones and missiles. And Iran over the last week has, released a few videos. One of them was, of course, a lot of people have seen that, all these new huge bases underground with missiles and so on. And the other was a video of a new weapon that the Iranians have developed called the plasma weapon. And this is an anti-air system that uses plasma to explode a target. And we don't have the full details of it, but it seems like it's kind of like a laser, but it isn't. And it heats up the air around the target to a couple of thousand degrees and melts it and explodes it. So this is the first country in the planet to show the use of a plasma weapon. The other thing that we should note is they released a new drone that is using nitrogen as its fuel. So it means it's much lighter and it can travel much further than regular drones. So these are all warnings to the US of what's to come. And finally, the Iranians yesterday announced that they put all their missiles on the highest alert, meaning they're now in their launchers and ready to be launched at any command by the higher ups.
Yes, the U.S. is. I feel I may be wrong. This is a lot of bluster because the fact of the matter is this: if the U.S. can't stop Ansar Allah from closing off the Red Sea, they certainly can't stop Iran from closing off the Straits of Hormuz and effectively wiping out the U.S. economy and the Western economy. So, but you never know how crazy these people are. Let me ask you this. The other thing I wanted to, well, we certainly we can't have this discussion without talking about Gaza. I saw this horrid story that I just posted. Facebook will probably take it down or whatever. But this horrid story where the Israelis literally came upon, I think it was 15 workers and they were, medical workers where there was injuries or whatever, and people responded, and they just executed 15 medics, just executed them, buried them in front of people. They weren't even right in front of family members, etc. They executed, told them lay on the ground, stripped them down, executed them, threw them in a mass grave, and buried them. And the U.S., I mean, these things. Now, I say Israel. In my opinion, I do not differentiate between Israel and the U.S. empire. I do not say Israel did it and the U.S. empire should have stopped them, didn't stop them, whatever. I say this is, I view Israel like this. When a criminal goes to commit a crime, oftentimes they put on a glove so they won't leave their fingerprints at the crime scene. No, I wasn't me. The gloves, you can't prove it. That's the only thing I see Israel as, a black glove that the criminal empire wears so that they can argue that their fingerprints are not at the scene of the crime, but they are in fact the hand inside of that glove. Israel cannot do anything without U.S. and they know every time they do something like this, and the U.S. just goes, "I didn't see anything. I didn't see anything." That's their way of saying, "We're in, just keep doing it. That's what we want." In fact, half the time I would argue the US is probably on the radio with them. There was radio transmissions where they were talking about what they were going to do. The US was in on that. They were, "Oh yeah, go right ahead, kill them all." They're doing this constantly. Anyway, your thoughts on Gaza and that whole, what's going on there, the horrific crimes that have, again, that never really stopped, might I add. When they couldn't attack Gaza, they said, "Okay, we'll go over to the West Bank for a while and kill people over there and then come back."
Yeah, these were 15 medics from the Red Cross, Red Crescent that were abducted from the hospital and then, as you said, executed in cold blood and thrown in a mass grave. The Israelis admitted openly that they're doing this on purpose. We saw also today Netanyahu openly saying that we will be either killing or expelling all the Palestinians in Gaza. That, you know, if the plan of Trump is not implemented, that they will implement the other option of genocide. That they're, you know, doing everything they can to make it that the Palestinians leave Gaza if they're not killed. And so, you know, after 16, 17 months of committing genocide out in the open, and the first few months having to lie about it in fear of backlash and so on, well, now the Israelis know that doesn't matter the backlash. In fact, the United States and Germany will deport anyone that opens their mouth and opposes genocide. Germany today started following the suit of Trump and doing the same, and that there will be no repercussions at the United Nations, international courts, or what have you, or cuts to the funding and or the arming of the Zionist colony. So might as well, you know, say it out in the open and rub it in everybody's face. I mean, they're telling the Palestinians and the world right now, well, here I am committing a massacre of 15 medics out in the open. I am saying I want to genocide the Palestinians. Show me what you can do. What can you do? Huh? Nothing? Okay, move along. This is basically the stage that we're in. And this is why it's crucial, obviously, that the resistance to this genocide in Western societies, you know, changes tack to move to a different stage, to at least the least of it, do direct action, like Palestine Action, the group in the UK that's destroying weapons manufacturers selling weapons to the Zionist colony or their branches, Zionist Israeli military companies, their branches in the UK. This has to be the least that what citizens in Western countries do. Direct action that harms the chain of delivery of weapons to the Zionist colony is the least that we should be expecting from citizens in the West.
Well, one thing about citizens in the West, if you expect, you might as well expect the least, because that's what you're always going to get. These idiots are going around burning Tesla dealers, and they don't even know why. They're like, "Hey, I hate Elon Musk," as though Elon Musk is something other than a creation of the system. And I'm going to go burn a Tesla dealer. Oh boy, they have insurance. Right now, those Teslas aren't selling, so they're sitting on the lot. So when you burn them, they can then collect the insurance for all of those Teslas that didn't sell. So now they get paid for them because nobody's buying them. If I had a car, What does the mafia do? There's an old saying called the going out of business fire. They got a business, it's not making money, it's not doing anything anymore. They burn it and collect the insurance. So the people that are burning Teslas are doing Tesla a favor by liquidating their products that they couldn't otherwise get rid of or get. So the idea that these fools are going to do anything of any value, they're going to fight over which one of these billionaires is representing them in their pathetic little minds.
When you mentioned this, my first thought when I saw those burnings happening is that actually maybe Musk is paying people to do this.
Yeah.
Because up until now, not one person was arrested. I mean, it took them just a few hours to get Luigi.
No, why would they arrest them? They don't want them to stop. Don't arrest them. Go out and do more. They don't see anything. They're cutting off their cameras so they can't. Did you see anything? No, it's just some crazy people. They're probably like leaving some gas cans around the lot just in case, and some lighters. There you go. Come on in. We can't sell these damn things, so help us out by burning them. It is pathetic that they don't even think through this stuff. But that's where we are. Your thoughts on? Oh, there's another big one that we have to touch on that I need an update on. Turkey. The last time we talked, there were massive. Erdogan had, as what you would expect from him, he had arrested the guy who probably would win the next election. Gee, who did he think he is? France? he arrested the guy who would win the next election. A lot of that going around these days. France, Romania, whatever. You know what I mean? So I guess, you know what? Let's say one thing, but real quick. It's kind of a message in these Western-run imperial countries now, isn't it? You better not announce you're going to run. If you announce you're going to run and the polls start looking like you may have a chance, you better get a lawyer because you're going to jail. Right. I mean, but all jokes aside, and lawyers have a term they call a chilling effect. This really does have a chilling effect. You or I, either one, if we thought, oh, well, I think I could win the election in the US or France or Spain or whatever, we'd be like, hell, there ain't no point running because if you run. And most of the time, these people are fairly wealthy or well-to-do or whatever. And they know, I'm living a pretty good life. I could probably win. But hell, if I run, I'm going to be crushed and lose everything and go to jail. So Erdogan, okay, that happens. There's humongous all over the country. We see gigantic protests, and now we haven't talked about what's happened since. Where are we now?
Yes, I mean it's also crazy if you look at how in Romania and France and Turkey, the accusation is corruption against the opponents of those in power. Yeah. I mean, we don't. I have never met a politician who isn't corrupt. So I mean, I thought it was part of the CV, requirements.
Right.
So so the demonstrations continue in Turkey. Even today, there was huge demonstrations, for our viewers that don't understand the makeup of Turkey. There's around 25% of the population that is Alawi. Mm-hmm. And then there's another, 25% that are Kurdish. And you have the Armenians, and you have the Christians, and you have the Jews. And so in reality, Turkey is very diverse. It may look like it's like a monolithic state, but it isn't. And the mayor of Istanbul is the highest visibility Alawi in the country in terms of a politician. He's the mayor of the largest city in the country. It's also a strategic point where the Bosphorus Strait is. It's the only connection between the European side and the Asian side of Turkey. So his arrest, and Istanbul itself is also very, very diverse. It's actually a majority of the citizens living inside Istanbul are from minorities. So there's a lot of Kurds, a lot of Alawis, a lot of Christians, a lot of Armenians that live in Istanbul. So his arrest has triggered demonstrations in all of the regions where there is minorities. the whole southern part of Turkey, from the Mediterranean to the Iraqi borders, is demonstrations on a daily basis. So this is the areas where Alawites and also Kurds live. And there was a 300,000 or 400,000 people out in the street of Istanbul yesterday. So this is ongoing. There's a total blackout in the media and of social media. So Facebook, Twitter, all of those are blocked now for a week in Turkey. We have no, we're not receiving much of the information that we should from the streets. And the mainstream media globally is blacking out the story. Al Jazeera, being a Ikhwani, Muslim Brotherhood, Turkish support, they're not covering it, Al Jazeera English, which is really the most viewed right now English TV station, news station in the world. And so we have not much to talk about because of the lack of information. But I would say one last thing about this is that the troubles inside Turkey are now also, spilling into Syria. And the troubles that were happening in Syria really were spilling into Turkey, which prepared us to what we just saw. So the mass killing of Alawites in Syria had already began to destabilize Turkey, with the Alawites in Turkey, looking at their brothers and sisters being slaughtered across the border. And while there's all these Wahhabi death squads and Chechens and Turkmen that are walking the streets of South Turkey amongst this Alawi population, and the targeting of the mayor because he's Alawi. So you see how all of this is triggering back and forth across the border destabilization. And if this continues, which I personally hope that the troubles continue in Turkey, Turkey may find itself unable to control the Wahhabi death squads inside Syria. And we see already Saudi Arabia angling itself to have more influence over HTS and try to pull it away from Erdogan and Qatar's influence. And one indicator of that is the Saudi government calling a meeting between the head of the Lebanese military and the HTS new Syrian military in Riyadh 2 days ago to negotiate on the issues of the border and the border clashes between Lebanon and Syria. And that wouldn't have happened if Erdogan was in full control of the situation inside his own country. Saudi Arabia wouldn't have dared to do this, and HTS wouldn't have dared send its Minister of Defense to negotiate in Riyadh instead of negotiating in Istanbul or Ankara, where the master controller Erdogan is.
I think that Turkey, additionally, I believe that, I've been watching since the horror of Gaza and the genocide began, that the people of Turkey are outraged, and to some extent outraged at their government. So I think that, do you think that the outrage, the anger of the people in Turkey against their government for not just turning a blind eye, but from, in some ways, many argue, being complicit in providing, valuable resources to the Israelis and the Americans to carry out their evil work, shall we say, in the region? That is something that has been at the beginning of what appears to be an increasing destabilization inside of Turkey, politically, culturally, and, as you say, ethnically destabilization.
Oh yes, and it was a little bit harder for a lot of times, as happens when you're trying to mobilize a population or make demonstrations about something that's far away from you. But so there was demonstrations in Turkey throughout the genocide, but the whole manipulation of Erdogan in the media and all his big words of denigrating the Zionists or Israel, kind of diffused the anger in the streets. But now, because the actions of Erdogan in Syria have brought things home, and with his arrest of the mayor of Istanbul, Imamoglu, now the population inside Turkey is out on the street on an issue that is local to it. It's not anymore, solidarity with the Palestinians that are far away. It's actually about saving Turkey from the dictatorship of Erdogan and the loss of the rights of the different minorities and the slaughter that's happening across the border in Syria. So I think right now, finally, the whole battle in Western Asia is becoming local to Turkey. And as we see, there's also the battle on the border with Armenia and Azerbaijan. There's the problems that are rising between Iran and Turkey. Now, Turkey on all sides practically has war, in Iraq, in Syria, in Ukraine, in Georgia, in Armenia, in Azerbaijan. The only areas that it doesn't have war is its border with Greece and Bulgaria. Okay, so the situation is getting worse and worse. The Turkish currency is dropping like crazy. Prices, inflation are going up. Any gains of trade that Turkey could have made with the fall of the Syrian government were temporary. Yes, you flood the Syrian market with Turkish products, but then the Syrians don't have money. What are they going to buy? How are they going to buy it? So it's anything that Erdogan had in his mind as a positive outcomes for all these wars around Turkey have now played out negatively. So I don't know how long Erdogan also can stay in power without the support of Iran and Russia. Remember the last time the coup was organized against Erdogan, it was Russia and Iran that saved him, and I wish they never did. But today, after the betrayal in Syria and the slaughter that we saw in Syria of Shias and Alawis and Christians, neither Russia or Iran have any need to support Erdogan.
Yeah, yes. I think eventually one of these countries will fall to, because what the U.S. wanted, let's say they want to replace Erdogan, well, they just want a complete total puppet in. Now, one that Erdogan can be unstable and they can't always count on him. They wanted a total puppet. But I think we're going to see some of these countries fall, but not to an imperial puppet. We're going to see some of these countries fall to some kind of an internal angry resistance, an internal dynamic. And at that point, the empire loses total control because they won't trust anyone. But I think that's the direction we're going. Do you know anything? I've heard various things, and I don't know if you know anything about what's going on in Sudan.
Oh, yeah. Sudan, is being chopped up. It's been 20 somewhat years. The West has been trying to break down Sudan. Remember, it used to be the 8th largest country in landmass before it was chopped up into South Sudan and Sudan. And the population in South Sudan is very sparse. Now most of the oil is there. So, you have a situation like Bahrain or Qatar, where a small population, a lot of oil, and you can bring in the engineers and so on from the West and loot all the resources, as has happened in the Gulf. And Sudan also has large gold and rare earth and rare metals deposits. The Emiratis, working with the Israelis, were supplying this rapid response units and sending them weapons to try to break up the country into even smaller parts. And as this war over the last year has been playing out, much of the gold and rare earths are being looted outright, and the West and the Emirates, gaining all this benefit from that. And we finally saw, and this is something nobody wants to talk about, by the way, Iran has been supporting the military of Sudan, and the Iranian weapons and Iranian satellite surveillance given to the Sudanese military have been crucial in the defeat of the rapid response units forces. And Russia is also involved. So Russia and Iran are behind the Sudanese military. The UAE, Israel are behind the rapid response forces. And so it's another one of the larger battle zones in Western Asia, East Africa, and North Africa between the imperialist camp and the anti-imperialist camp on a global scale. And of course, if Sudan is broken up even smaller, this will affect Egypt, just north of it, and Chad. It may affect even Ethiopia, and we're already seeing some of those effects in Ethiopia with the beginning of flow of Emirati weapons. And this is also all connected to what's happening in Somalia, by the way, where again, the Emiratis and the Israelis are supporting secessionist groups in what is called Somaliland and Puntland to break them off from Somalia in order to have control of the fisheries and the ports looking on the other side of Yemen, and to open up a shipping route for Ethiopia that is landlocked. So everything is connected, honestly, in this world that we live in. And the same villains, we see them everywhere, the Emiratis, the Israelis, the Americans, and the same forces that are resisting them on a global scale also.
Before we go, I do want to ask you, because a country I know you know about, Canada seems unstable. They got a new prime minister, which I mean, a new face, a new puppet. But your thoughts on what's going on in that place?
Yeah, Carney, the new head of the Liberal Party in Canada, he's famous because he's on the Epstein Black Book, okay, as one of the visitors to the island. And there's pictures of Carney and his wife with Ghislaine Maxwell, okay, the patrona that used to collect the underage children for Maxwell. Sorry, for Epstein.
Yeah.
Yes. So it's the same cabal of pedophiles, sexual perverts that rules the West. And he's going against the head of the Conservative Party, Pierre Poilievre, who's also, we don't have any pictures of him in such situations, but he's also Zionist. Both of them are Zionist. And it's the two richest Zionist families in Canada are each one of them is funding one of these candidates, Carney and Poilievre. It's similar to what happened in the U.S. with Trump versus Kamala Harris. You had the Adelsons here, and what's the other guy, that other billionaire that was
Soros,
right?
Yeah,
Soros versus Adelson, two Jewish Zionists, both of them taking one of the leading parties. This is happening in Canada. This is happening in most of the West, and in the end, it doesn't matter who wins because the Zionists are going to win.
Yeah, I think you're right. It's amazing to watch, and when you look at it all the way down, I as an investigator, I always look into a lot of stuff, and it's something I've been looking into lately to write, and that is, remember the whole, like, people are like, well, why do these leaders do everything that they're told and blah blah blah. The Bill Clinton Monica Lewinsky thing, right? Just something to think about. Remember the Clinton Lewinsky, and what happened was Monica Lewinsky. How did it all blow up? Monica Lewinsky had a friend named Linda Tripp. You remember that? And Linda Tripp was a woman who Monica Lewinsky talked to and confided in, and isn't this interesting? She confided in this woman named Linda Tripp, and Linda Tripp then recorded 20 hours of their conversations. Linda Tripp also admitted that Monica Lewinsky was going to throw away the blue dress, and she convinced her not to throw away the blue dress. And you're like, oh, so she just happened to be a friend, right? Okay. Do you know what Linda Tripp did before she came to the White House? She worked for military intelligence. She worked for, anybody can look it up. She worked for military intelligence. Oh, by the way, when Linda Tripp was on the phone with Monica Lewinsky, talking to Monica Lewinsky and recording everything that Monica Lewinsky said, convincing her not to throw away the blue dress, who was writing Linda Tripp's check every 2 weeks? The Pentagon. She was military intelligence prior to coming to the White House. She came to the White House, right? After she left the White House, who she worked for, a guy named Vince Foster, who mysteriously committed suicide, right? She worked for him. Supposedly the last person to talk to Vince Foster before he committed suicide, right? And then they take Linda Tripp, take her out of the White House and put her at a Pentagon in this desk with nothing around it, right? Nobody, some dark, deep, dark place in the Pentagon. They then transfer Monica Lewinsky out of the White House right next to Linda Tripp. Linda Tripp spikes up a friendship with her and starts talking on the phone all the time and starts recording 20 hours of it. In other words, and might I add, at the time, at all that was going on, Epstein was in and out of the White House like 19 or 26 times or something. So the bottom line, if that was just another Zionist operation, who knows why? Maybe to keep Bill Clinton in line. Maybe
I'll tell you why.
Okay, go ahead. This is what I want to know.
And we'll end it here. At the same time, or just before the scandal came out, Clinton was trying to broker a peace deal between Syria and the Zionist colony.
Yes.
And he had promised President Hafez al-Assad that all of the Golan Heights will be returned, including the shoreline of the Sea of Galilee. And within, weeks of that happening, the Monica Lewinsky scandal broke out, and then Clinton withdrew from those negotiations. And this is part of what Hafez al-Assad was really pissed off about as president of Syria. And he, from that point on, he told Bashar al-Assad, who became later the president, his son, that look, you can't even trust an American president being able to deliver something like this, because the Zionists will pull on him another Lewinsky.
And Lewinsky, apparently, she had been going to Israel every year. That's purely coincidence. Certainly, there's nothing related to Epstein. Oh, by the way, in Epstein's mansion in New York, when you walked in the mansion, there was a picture of Bill Clinton in a blue dress. Wasn't there? Remember that?
Yes.
I think it was his way of letting everybody know, I was behind that. I can get you, that's the president. I took down the president. Any of you at any given time, when you see that, understand that the people that I represent can get you.
Yeah, and the painting of Bush with the two Jenga towers.
Also. Yeah. How about that? Yeah, purely coincidence, I'm sure. Laith Marouf, before we go, everybody has to understand what's going on here. What the important thing, if you didn't listen to anything, let's just say, as an example, you had accidentally had your sound off and you didn't listen to anything and you haven't heard a word that we said. You still have to go to freepalestine.video. That's freepalestine.video, FPTV. Look at the video here. This is unbelievable stuff. You're not getting this anywhere else. So you got their latest episodes, field reports, military operations, you name it. You can go there and see all kinds of video, learn all kinds of things from on the ground, from freepalestine.video. And of course, donate to freepalestine.tv. There's a donate sign one time, but we would much prefer if you click over the monthly side. I mean, let's say you can only do $5 or $10, but you can do it monthly. If enough people do that, that allows and his crew to continue to do their fine work. Laith Marouf, thank you very much. Certainly appreciate you coming on again. Everyone, share this. Share this on all your social media platforms. And of course, follow me on Rockfin and on Rumble. Every now and then, YouTube takes some of this stuff down. And when they take it down, you can go straight to Rockfin and Rumble and watch it at no charge. Thank you very much. We're out.